air you breathe, the grounds you walk upon, the taste and touch, our way of embracing the world around us. And as humans, it's difficult to imagine how this experience was once an unremitting horror for us. To ask ourselves, how much horror have we endured before finding warmth within this world, after we were deprived from our blissful comfort, and brought into a world that is cold, cruel, and unforgiving, an experience that is long forgotten, a memory that is but a withered and fading nightmare. But what if Mother Nature found a way to give back that bliss? That, my friends, is an interesting horror that must be shared. And that's what today's story is. A mystery that found itself on the shores of a beach and immediately began attracting crowds and people from different cities and nearby towns. When it was first discovered, people thought it was a dead well that got washed up on the beach, until they got a closer look, only to find that this thing was not a well, but what scientists would call the discovery of the century. According to scientists, this thing is most likely prehistoric. Based off the protrusions within the body, it's possible that this creature emits light, much like an anglerfish. And noticing the transparent spots surrounding the body, a creature with rare skin. The creature may have been fully transparent when it was still alive, thus meaning that it may have came from the depths of the ocean, which kinda made some scientists uncomfortable with the thought of this thing swimming in the dark. Amazing how humanity has the technology to walk on the moon, and yet they still don't know what lies beneath the oceans. What world awaits at the bottom? The horrors hidden within the abyss. But it looks like the scientists are now facing an issue when noticing the rotting stench coming from the creature, the day getting hotter, causing the carcass to decay much faster, and the increased number of people joining the crowd. That may jeopardize everything if they start touching the creature. It's only a matter of time before these scientists realize that this precious discovery being ruined is the least of their concerns. Within this crowd of spectators, one of them, Kaito, has no idea why he spent half of the day driving to see this thing after hearing it on the morning news. The strange thing, Kaito despises the ocean, and most of all coming here to see this grotesque horror that came from the ocean. The truth is, somehow, some way, it was fear that drove him here. The fear he has for marine life, a fear that stemmed from a time within Kaito's life where he used to visit a zoo that was on its final days. In that zoo was a small aquarium. It was like a world confined within a dark building. Fish of different kinds behind a glass wall, abnormal and bizarre monstrosities that were long forgotten by the universe, remnants of the unknown. Hidden beneath the depths of the ocean. Since then, Kaito would be haunted by these dreams of himself drifting helplessly within the abyss, surrounded by ancient monstrosities and horrors of all kind. This dream was always the same. As the temperature of the sun increased, and the stench of rot grew stronger, right beside Kaito was a woman who suddenly collapsed because of the intense heat. Tending to this woman by helping her into the shade, her reasons for being here was similar. Drove here after seeing the creature on the morning news. Funny thing is, she too has a fear of the ocean. Unlike Kaito, her fears of the ocean stem from the loss of a loved one. You see, it was about 7 years ago. I'm not sure if anybody remembers the incident where there was a ferry that sunk during a violent storm. A lot of people had lost their lives. Her fiancé was on that ferry, and none of the people were ever found, not even a single trace, as if they were taken by the sea. So many years she wondered if her husband was still alive, stranded on an island or something. But in time she eventually had given up and accepted the reality that her husband was dead. But she always dreamed of the ocean. Bizarre dreams that she wasn't herself, but her husband, drifting through the deep ocean, floating like an embryo, protected by this invisible wall that separated her from these monstrosities and the horrors on the other side. It was like she would experience the fear of this dream, the comforts of safety and security, and the feelings of bliss. And the dreams were always the same, and every time she would experience them, it was like they would warp her mind after she would wake up. Once the temperature began to rise, that was when people began noticing something happening with the creature's skin. Not only was it starting to become more transparent, but they could see the inside of it. And that was when the scientists and people would uncover something truly terrifying about this discovery, that inside this creature were people, dozens of bodies that were inside what looked like the intestines of this creature. And according to the state of the bodies, these people must have recently been devoured, seeing how they haven't went through the process of being digested. Now, the greatest discovery had just become a horror show when people began to panic and immediately find a way to get these people out of the creature's body. And as they cut into the creature's thick flesh, the rancid stench growing more powerful as the insides slowly began to make its way out of the creature. The bodies within would suddenly spill out of this grotesque creature, giving the shocked audience a mound of slime-covered bodies that were poured out onto the beach. Quite the horror show, leaving the audience speechless. That moment of silence before this nightmarish scene would be hounded with so many questions. I think the most popular curiosity on the minds of many was, how did these people end up inside this creature? And even though the bodies looked frail, there were no signs of decomposing nor tissue damage. But our crowd of spectators were about to witness an unexpected twist to this horror, when some would notice the movement within the mound of flesh, a twitching hand, a gasping mouth. These people were still alive, and immediately that's when emergency services were called. And when that woman, the one with the missing fiancé, would have herself a good look at these bodies, the horrors of this mystery would slowly unravel itself when she would see a familiar face. It couldn't be, but it was. One of the bodies, trying to crawl from the mound, was her missing fiancé. And even though Kaito and others found it hard to believe that this man, these people, were inside the gut of this creature for 7 long years, and yet the scientists were slowly believing that's exactly what happened. But when the woman tried reaching out to her fiancé, break him from his disorientation as his mind slowly brings him back from his deep slumber, it was when his and the eyes of these people would open and see the open skies for the first time in 7 years. That was when the man and all these missing people would suddenly scream in sheer terror. The mound of bodies would begin to panic, violently throwing their bodies, trying to crawl over each other, literally traumatized from the horrors of their experience. And looking upon the scene, Kaito just couldn't help but feel that these missing people were like parasites. And even though it sounded unbelievable that human beings are capable of surviving as parasites, it actually made sense for the scientists. These people, who were part of the shipwreck 7 years ago, were not only consumed by the creature, but were kept alive within its gut, feeding off the nutrients taken in by the creature, meaning that it's most likely because of these people that the creature died and ended up here on the beach. Unfortunately, there was no happy ending for the woman and her missing fiancé, nor the other survivors. As a result of the incident, It would be a miracle if any of the survivors would be able to cope back into society or the world again. Every one of them severely handicapped and traumatized. Kinda makes you wonder though, in the comforts of that creature, what horrors they saw down there behind the transparent skin.
You'll be hearing things about blood sacrifice, death, occultic symbols, the upside-down cross, possession, distorted faces, darkness. All these things are involved in satanic worship.